A lot of people had had quite traumatic journeys, as the name refugee implies really. They didn't necessarily want to speak about their stories. They'd told them to the Home Office again and again and again. But all of them had objects that had a resonance for them. And I became inspired. My father came from the Republic of Ireland in the 1960s. And there's a shirt that he had when he came that I've kept, sort of 50 years later, over 50 years later. And I thought, well, I've got this, it means something to me. Our clients, the refugees and migrants that we deal with, will also have important objects and will have stories about them. Some that we asked simply said, we asked them what they'd come with, and they simply shook their heads and pointed to themselves. And they said, I've come with myself. I literally was able to take nothing else. So I want to hear about things from people in their own words. And this, the objects were a conduit to people talking about those experiences. It's not just a shirt, is it? I can remember my dad taking out the wardrobe and saying, this is basically all I had when I left Ireland.
نحن كنا عم نهرب من منطقة لمنطقة لمنطقة، أي منطقة يصير فيها قصف نهرب على منطقة تانية. وبعدين في زوجتي هي وابني. طبعا زوجتي عانت كتير بالحرب. بالقصف تصاوبت زوجتي وابني، قصف مراجمة صواريخ، وهربنا بعدين. لما تصاوبت زوجتي وابني كل ما الأمور صارت تزيد سوء بسوريا. طبعا هربنا كتير نحن، تعرضنا للموت كتير، تعرضنا للاعتقال كتير، تعرضت غير هاي المرة. وكان رب العالمين واقف معنا دائما، بس الحياة صارت صعبة كتير وما عاد نقدر. ما عاد فيني اشتغل. حاولت اشتغل بس ما عم بقدر حتى بعد العملية انه وقف فترة طويلة او اشتغل اي شيء. زوجتي ما عاد تقدر تعيش بالخوف والرعب اللي كانت عايشة فيه بريطانيا. مشكورين طبعا دولة بريطانيا لانه قدموا لنا كثير مساعدات.
هاي السجادة بحبها كثير لانه بتذكرني بسوريا، بتذكرني بالتراث السوري تبعنا. بحبها كثير لانها هي من سوريا، من بلدي. وانا بفتخر انه هذا السجاد من بلدي، وكثير بكون فرحانة اني ورجي العالم صناعة سوريا. بحس دائما انه لازم تساعد العالم، لانه هذا الشيء كنت افتقده كثير بسوريا، وبنفس الوقت مشان احاول انخرط بالمجتمع، مجتمع جديد، مشان اقدر ساعد زوجي، اقدر ساعد اولادي. بحب الحياة الجديدة تبعي كثير، مبسوطة فيها كثير. عم نحاول قدر الامكان اندمج بالمجتمع. الحمد لله صار في عندي كثير اصدقاء هون بحبونا وبنحبهم.
I left Rwanda in 1994. We had a genocide happening. I lost most of my family in 1994, which is the reason I had to leave the country.
So you hadn't known that your mother survived until you met her again?
That's right, yes.
How did it feel when you met her again?
Wow. It was an amazing thing, really. I felt alive, I would say, because beforehand I was a totally lost person with nobody, nothing. In Rwanda, the houses were destroyed, no family. So it was a really, I felt alive again, really. So I would say that was one of my happiest moments. I came in February. I wasn't aware about the weather, really, how cold it would be. As soon as I got to the airport, I said, what am I doing here? And it was really something I've never faced in my life. There was no way to go back by that time anyway. Going back to Rwanda, that was the last thing in my mind, knowing what happened and going back to see the bad memories there. So that was out of my mind, which is why I decided to stay here. To educate people, it's a way of giving a message across of what happened, and also to stop it happening. Once people are educated the reason why genocide happened, they are more aware of how it can be prevented. Bedford, I moved here 14 years ago, so I find it as my second home, part of my life. My hope for my future, I'm studying at the moment. I'm trained to be a social worker, so it's a way of helping other people in a way.
And things started going wrong after that.
Had you known Jewish people before?
Oh
that?
yes, we had a neighbor, a lovely woman with her little daughter, Elena, and I remember playing with Elena. Bullets were flying above our heads.
It sounds very frightening.
Very, very frightening. And there must have been a period when I didn't go to school. There was a small kind of local, very small shop that we used to get our milk and bread from whenever it was available. And one day my mother asked me if I would go down and get something. I can't remember what it was. And I remember getting to the shop. There were a lot of other people all crowding around the shop, and the front entrance to the shop was blown out completely. And it seems the owner of the shop, the shopkeeper, had gone to open the shop, and there was a bomb just inside the door, and it blew up, and he was killed as well. So I had to go back with nothing. She had 7 brothers, all living in Haifa, and they all were well off and had their own cars and their own families. So they gradually, one family after another, left Haifa. Everybody thought they were leaving just for a short time. The message came to my uncle and to my mother: if you want to leave Haifa, be ready to leave tomorrow morning, just like that. And that was evening. Just bring the very, very essentials, just enough for a couple of weeks, because most probably you'll be back by then. So 4 little girls and my mother, it was very difficult to get everything in one little suitcase. One of my sisters had a lovely doll, probably now it would be an antique doll, dressed like Little Red Riding Hood, and she picked it up and put it in the little suitcase. My mother took it off and out and put it in the chest of drawers in her drawer, and my sister brought it out again, and my mother said, no, we will leave the doll here, we will be back and then you can have it again. We never saw that doll again. Up till now I have always cherished, it sounds trivial now, a bed cover that my mother had embroidered for me, a linen bed cover for my bed, and it was beautifully embroidered, and I loved to have it. I didn't ask, but I knew I was only allowed to use it on special occasions at home, and that certainly didn't come out with us. But I think my mother was so stressed about knowing what to take with her, because when we came out, we had no passports. She forgot to bring our passports, she forgot to bring any documents like birth certificates or anything. We had absolutely no identification.
What do you remember about that part of the journey?
Very frightening, because it was getting evening time, it was getting dark by the time the lorry started moving, and I remember looking over the edge we were seated on the edge of the open space, because it was open, it wasn't covered, the lorry, and I was looking over the edge and I could see sheer drops into the valleys along the way, and I was really frightened. I was the eldest, so my sisters were much younger. My youngest sister was maybe 18 months or something like this. No, everybody was very quiet. Everybody was in awe, I think, of what's going to happen. Nobody knew what will happen at the end of the journey. And for me, I wondered whether the truck would last, because it was making funny rattling noises all the way. It was a very, very old lorry. had no home, no income, nothing. We had just the clothes we were standing in basically by the time, and we were all growing, all the 4 girls growing, and so we had no clothes anymore. And for me, as an adult afterwards, the fact that the way they left my sister back in Damascus, she had her usual afternoon nap, so my mother put her in her cot to sleep in one of the houses, my uncle's houses, and the 3 of us with my mother, a friend came over and picked us up and took us to the bus station, where we boarded the bus to Lebanon, to Baalbek. And my little sister woke up, no mother, no sisters. She was absolutely heartbroken. She stood outside that house. She wouldn't stay in the house. She ran outside where she saw us last, and she kept crying, "Mama." And she loved me very much because I was the eldest. I often looked after her. "Mama, Siham, Siham." And we went there. And for almost a week, she just kept crying and calling for her mother, for my mother and for me, and she would be crying in the evening. And the headmistress, who was very kind, noticed what was happening. And she came to my mother one evening and said to her, "Let's bring Huda over and see how it will go." And my mother was so grateful, so thankful. I inherited this, one of the very few objects from my father's family. Well, through my father, yeah. And I think it belonged to his parents, most probably to his grandparents as well. And my father's family came from Nazareth in Palestine. And they were quite a large family as well. But the pestle and mortar is something that was used to crush spices, basically. And you can smell it as you walk into the house, and you hear the banging of this pestle in the mortar. And yes, the noise and the smell, the sound of this and the smell is very, very memorable to me. Even as a child, I used to notice it, and I still remember it. It does take me back to our home in Beirut, in Palestine, although I was pretty young then, but I still remember it there.
The project for 2017, which is Voices, includes those objects from last year and printed as well on gauze. But a group of volunteers, refugees and migrants, are actually stitching land, what could represent land on part of those prints from the different countries that those objects have come from. The workshops, we've had quite a few chats about their own personal experiences, and I think they've become more and more enthusiastic in taking part in this project, so much so that some of them have done more than one print, and they've carried on coming to the workshops even when they finished their first one. It's been fantastic the way they have, really got into the project and wanted to really complete it, and they can't wait to see what happens. I feel terribly honoured to be able to do this.